refrigerator vinegar pickles. I'm going to show you how to do that today. These are super easy. You're going to make a brine in a saucepan, pour them over your vegetables, put them in a jar, and have them sit in the fridge for about 24 hours and then enjoy for up to a month. So for this recipe, we're going to use half a cup of white vinegar. We're going to use some whole peppercorns. We're going to use about 2 teaspoons of honey. We're going to do half a teaspoon of salt and 1 crushed garlic clove. And today we're going to be pickling a cucumber and beans. So with vinegar pickles, typically white vinegar is used because of its high acidity. So this is generally 5 to 10% acidity, which is usually higher than apple cider vinegar or red wine. It also doesn't carry any flavor with it, so it's great for making a pickle brine because you can add the flavors that you want into it, like garlic or dill or fennel. And pickles are another thing that is easy to be creative with in the brine and in the vegetables. You can add in herbs to the brine, spices, all kinds of things like that. And you can pickle almost any vegetable you can think of, from carrots to zucchini to what we're going to do today, which is beans and cucumbers, radishes, beets. You can get really creative with what you pickle. So this is a really basic recipe, but make it your own and have fun with it. First, we're going to prep our vegetables to go in our jar. I'm going to do a combination of cucumber strips and green beans, and I'm going to use this size jar. So I'm going to trim my vegetables to fit inside this jar. And to begin, I'm just going to cut the ends off of the cucumber. And then I think this is going to be best if I cut it in half so that it will fit lengthwise into the jar, because I'm going to cut it into strips. So then I'm going to cut it there and cut it in fourths. So I have quarter strips, and I'm going to do that with the other half. You don't have to cut them like this. A lot of people will cut them into rounds. It just depends on what size pickle you want to have and what you want to use them for. So with these, I'm just going to put some into the jar. And we're going to leave some room for some of our beans. So again, with the beans, these don't need too much chopping, but I want to get some that will fit into the jar nicely. So I can measure with the cucumber and maybe just cut a few of the ends off. Okay, so these are the perfect shape, and these you can either eat raw, which I love to do, or you can add them to a stir fry, a soup. Just don't throw those away. Those are really good. So next I'm going to fill the jar with the veg. If you're using any fresh herb like dill or fennel fronds, you're going to want to put them in now with your beans and cucumbers and other vegetables. But if you're not using any, that's fine too. So you want to try and get the jar pretty full with vegetables, because then you have more pickles and the brine goes even further. Because you'll notice this recipe doesn't use too much brine, because you want to get all of your vegetables in there and have them completely submerged. Okay, so this poor cucumber slice didn't make it into the jar, so I think I'm going to eat that, but this is what it should look like when you're ready to put the brine in. So for this pickle brine, I'm going to use 1 clove of garlic, and I'm just going to crush it. So I'm going to cut the end off, pound it, and remove the skin. And then to get some of that garlic flavor in there, I'm just going to pound it again and break it apart a little bit so that we get that nice pickle flavor. When we've crushed the garlic clove, go ahead and just stick that into the jar. Okay, so next up we're going to start making this brine. So I'm going to measure out half a cup of the vinegar. We're going to add this to a saucepan. Next up is half a teaspoon of salt. Then we're going to do about 2 teaspoons of honey vinegar is extremely acidic, and especially white vinegar, it's nice to balance it out with some sweetness. You can use granulated sugar if you would like. I love honey and the flavor of that, so I'm going to do about 2 teaspoons. And you can really play around with your pickle recipe with how much sugar you add if you want some more salty pickles or more sweet pickles. So feel free to add more or less honey or sugar as you like your pickles to be. The final ingredient is whole peppercorns, which I'm gonna just sprinkle in. This you can eyeball. Maybe about a teaspoon would be a great place to start, just to give the pickles a nice kick. And then we're gonna go ahead and turn that onto medium heat and let the sugar and salt dissolve. So our brine is pretty much ready. It doesn't necessarily have to be boiling. What you're looking for is for it to be hot and for that sugar and the salt to dissolve. So you can see that's all dissolved in there, so we're ready to pour this over our veg. So once you have filled your pickles up with brine, you might need to double the brine recipe depending on the size of your jar, but just use that basic recipe as the ratio for the brine ingredients. Then you're going to want to put a lid on this. Somehow we don't have lids for this jar in the office. And then you want to let it cool to room temperature before you put it in the fridge. And then once that's nice and cool, you can stick it in the refrigerator and just let it sit for 24 hours and then enjoy. And these will keep up in the fridge for up to a month.